Okay, what if I told you that the secret to a lean, vital body has less to do with what you eat or how much you exercise and everything to do with what you think? Today, we're going to dive into a philosophy that completely flips conventional wisdom on its head. It argues that real lasting change doesn't start in the gym, but right here in your mind.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll rethink what the problem even is. Then, we'll get into something called the feeling first principle and what it means to let go of control. We'll also look at the practice of allowing, and finally, we'll talk about what this way of thinking calls your body's natural state. Sound good? Let's get into it.
All right, let's start with the biggest question of all. What if we've been focusing on the wrong problem this whole time? This approach really makes you stop and think. Is my body the issue, or is it the story I'm telling myself about my body?
And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got that familiar voice, right? The "I need to fix this" mindset. But on the right, we have this totally different idea. What if the real work isn't physical, but mental? Shifting from fixing to appreciating, that's a complete game changer.
So where does so much of this negative thinking come from? Well, a huge part of it is comparison. This philosophy calls it an illusion, because the dissatisfaction isn't coming from some actual flaw in your body. It's coming from the story you create when you measure yourself against someone else. It is a total trap, and it keeps us from feeling good.
Okay, so if our negative thinking is the problem, what's the solution? Well, that brings us to our next big idea, the incredible power of your emotional state. This is where we shift from just identifying the problem to exploring a whole new way of moving forward.
And this is where things get really fascinating. This perspective asks a question that kind of goes against everything we're taught about health. What if instead of trying to act our way into feeling good, we could actually feel our way into taking better actions? It's a pretty radical thought, but it has the potential to change everything.
Look at how this is laid out. It's a sequence, a path. It's not about forcing yourself to go to the gym or eat a salad. It's about starting with love and acceptance, right here, right now. That creates a good feeling inside you. And from that good feeling, you don't have to force anything. You're naturally inspired to do things that are good for you.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. When we act out of self-criticism or hate, we're basically fighting ourselves. The actions we take are stressed and forced. But when we come from a place of love and acceptance, our actions are in alignment with our true well-being. It's so simple, but wow, is it powerful.
So if acting from a place of love is the goal, what's the big roadblock? What keeps getting in the way? That brings us to our next concept, resistance. This is seen as the main obstacle to our well-being, and it's something we all need to get a handle on.
Now this is a pretty bold statement, I know, but just think about it for a second. What if all this effort to micromanage and control our bodies is actually working against a natural flow? This perspective suggests that this constant fight just creates stress and conflict within us.
So, what is this resistance exactly? Well, you know that little voice in your head? The one that's always judging, criticizing, and telling you that things should be different than they are? That's resistance. It's that mental friction. And this philosophy says it puts a ton of stress on our bodies, preventing them from working perfectly.
So the key isn't to fight our bodies into submission. It's about freeing them from the constant barrage of our own negative thoughts. When we can release that resistance, we're basically just getting out of our own way, and we create space for our bodies to find their natural, healthy balance.
Okay, so we've identified the problem, resistance. But how in the world do we overcome it? That's where our next section comes in, the actual practice of allowing. This is where we move from theory to action, and it's a real game changer.
The main tool in the toolbox for learning to allow is the use of affirmations. But hold on, these are not just cheesy, feel-good platitudes. They're seen as powerful tools for literally rewiring our thought patterns, for replacing that old critical inner voice with a new, more empowering one. Here are just a few examples. Notice the pattern here? They're not about what you want to be. They're about accepting who you are right now. They're all about self-love, dropping the comparison game, and shifting your whole focus from how you look to how you feel. And that, right there, is a massive shift.
So this is the big payoff. What actually happens when we stop resisting and start allowing? This brings us to the very heart of this philosophy, the idea of returning to your body's natural state. It's a beautiful concept, and it's something we supposedly all have access to.
The idea here is actually pretty simple.
Your body knows what it's doing. It's this incredible self-regulating system that is designed for health and vitality. The only thing that's really getting in the way is our own negative, resistant thinking. When we finally get out of our own way, our bodies can just do their thing.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Our natural state isn't something we have to fight and claw our way towards. It's something we simply have to allow. It's about letting go, easing up, and letting our bodies take the lead. It's a radical idea, but you have to admit, it's also incredibly freeing.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? It really boils down to a simple but profound shift in perspective. Instead of chasing a number on a scale or a specific look in the mirror, what if we chased a feeling? What if the goal was just to feel good in our own skin, and we trusted that a healthy, vital body would be the natural result? It's a question worth asking, and honestly, it might just change everything.